My name is Griselda, and I'm 32 years old, running my own art gallery in Boston. I still remember the day the invitation arrived for everyone in the family except me. My sister Natalie was having a beautiful beach wedding in Hawaii, but my mother said I would make it awkward for everyone, with my burn scars. I just nodded and said, I understand. They had no idea what I was planning or how their rejection would lead to the most beautiful day of my life. If you're watching this right now, drop a comment, letting me know where you're from. Hit that subscribe button if you've ever felt excluded by the people who should love you most. And stick around to see how I turned heartbreak into the happiest day of my life. Before my scars defined how my family saw me, we were actually quite close. I grew up in a suburban neighborhood outside of Philadelphia with my parents and my younger sister Natalie, who was 2 years my junior. Our childhood was filled with backyard barbecues, family game nights, and annual vacations to the Jersey Shore. Dad worked as an engineer, and Mum taught 3rd grade at the local elementary school. We were your typical American family. Not perfect, but happy and functional. I was an outgoing child, always the first to volunteer for school plays or raise my hand in class. Natalie was quieter, but equally loved. We shared a bedroom until I was 10, giggling under the covers and telling each other secrets long after our parents thought we were asleep. Mum would braid our hair the same way, and we often wore coordinating outfits for family photos. Those photos still exist in albums at my mother's house, evidence of a time when I was considered presentable enough to be included in family memories. Everything changed when I was 12 years old. It was during a severe thunderstorm that knocked out power to our neighborhood. My parents had set up candles throughout the house, and I had one in my bedroom. I was reading a novel determined to finish just one more chapter. The next thing I remember is waking up to flames. I had fallen asleep and the book had fallen onto the candle, catching fire. In my panic, I knocked over the candle and my bedding and curtains quickly ignited. The fire spread rapidly. I screamed for help as I tried to escape, but my nightgown caught fire. My father broke down the door and wrapped me in a shower curtain to smother the flames, but by then the damage was done. 40% of my body was severely burned, including the right side of my face, my neck, my right arm, and parts of my torso and leg. What followed was a blur of pain and fear. I spent 8 months in the hospital, enduring countless surgeries, skin grafts, and excruciating physical therapy. The pain was indescribable, but almost worse was seeing the look on my mother's face the first time she saw me after the bandages came off. She tried to hide it, but I caught it. That flash of horror quickly masked by forced cheerfulness. That look would become familiar to me over the years, not just from her, but from strangers, classmates, and even some relatives. My father was different. From the very beginning, he treated me exactly the same as he always had. He never flinched when looking at me, never treated me like I was fragile or damaged. "You're still my Griselda," he would say. "The fire couldn't touch who you really are." He was my rock during those dark days, sitting by my hospital bed for hours, helping me with my exercises when I wanted to give up and fiercely defending me when others stared or made comments. Coming home from the hospital was both a relief and the beginning of a new kind of pain. Our family dynamics had shifted permanently. Mum became simultaneously overprotective and subtly ashamed. She would shield me from activities that might overtax me, but I could also see her cringe when neighbours or her co-workers would see me for the first time. She started arranging my hair to cover as much of my scarring as possible, buying me high-necked shirts and long sleeves even in summer, and developing elaborate excuses for why I couldn't attend certain events. Natalie, who was only 10 when the accident happened, began to pull away. I don't blame her. She was just a child herself, suddenly thrust into a family trauma. But the sister, who once shared all her secrets with me, started spending more time at friends' houses. She stopped inviting her own friends over. Once I overheard her telling someone on the phone, "My sister was in an accident. She looks kind of scary now." That hurt more than any of the surgeries. Extended family reactions varied wildly. My maternal grandmother could barely look at me without tearing up, which made every holiday dinner uncomfortable. My father's parents were matter-of-fact about it, treating me normally, but making sure I had extra dessert. My mum's sister Monica avoided me entirely, while my dad's brother Tom and his wife became extra supportive, often inviting me for weekend stays, where I could just be a normal kid for a while. My teenage years were a special kind of hell. Returning to school meant facing the stares, whispers, and occasional cruel comments from classmates. Some teachers were wonderful, going out of their way to make sure I was included and respected. Others were clearly uncomfortable, avoiding calling on me in class, as if my burns had somehow affected my brain. I lost most of my friends. The few who stayed were precious to me, but the isolation was intense. I retreated into books and art, finding solace in worlds where appearance didn't matter. Depression hit me hard around 15. I stopped trying in school, stopped leaving the house except when absolutely necessary. I covered all the mirrors in my room. There were days I didn't want to live anymore, when the burden of navigating a world that couldn't see past my scars felt too heavy to bear. Again, it was my father who pulled me through. He signed me up for an art therapy program for burn survivors. He found me a therapist who specialized in trauma and body image. Most importantly, he never ever treated me like my life was worth less because of what had happened. "You have so much to offer this world, Griselda," he would tell me. "Don't let them convince you otherwise." Slowly, painfully, I started to rebuild myself. I joined the school newspaper, writing articles where my words mattered more than my face. I discovered a talent for photography, capturing beauty in unexpected places. By senior year, I had a small but solid group of friends who had gotten past their initial reactions to my appearance. I was planning to attend college in Boston, pursuing a degree in art history, despite my mother's objections that I should stay closer to home, where people know your situation. And then, just as I was finding my footing again, we lost Dad. He had a massive heart attack when I was 22, just after my college graduation. He was only 54. The loss was devastating for all of us, but it hit me especially hard. My champion, my constant supporter, the one person who never made me feel less than because of my scars, was gone. His death widened the already growing gap between me and the rest of my family. Without Dad's mediating presence, Mum and Natalie fell back into their patterns of discomfort and avoidance around me. At his funeral, I overheard my mother telling a relative, "I worry about Griselda's future now. Who will take care of her?" As if my scars had rendered me incapable of independence. As if Dad had been my keeper rather than my supporter. In the wake of his death, I made a decision. I would live the life my father had always believed I could have. I would refuse to be hidden away or treated as less than whole. I would honor him by embracing every opportunity, by living fully and openly in a world that might not always welcome me. It was the hardest promise I've ever made, but also the most important. Despite my mother's objections, I moved to Boston for college. She had wanted me to live at home and attend community college, arguing that I would be more comfortable in familiar surroundings. What she really meant was that she would be more comfortable if I remained hidden from public view. But I had been accepted to Boston University with a partial scholarship, and I was determined to go. The transition wasn't easy. For the first time, I was navigating a world where no one knew my story, where every introduction meant watching someone process their initial reaction to my appearance. My roommate assigned randomly moved out after 3 days claiming allergies, but unable to look me in the eye. There were painful moments, humiliating encounters, and nights spent crying into my pillow. But there were also unexpected blessings. My art history professors valued my insights and perspective, not caring about the scars that twisted one side of my face. The university's Disability Services Office connected me with resources I hadn't known existed, including a support group for students with visible differences. Slowly, I built a community of friends who saw beyond my burns. One of those friends was Jake, a music composition major, who asked me out after we were paired for a collaborative arts project. He was the first person to ever express romantic interest in me, and I was simultaneously thrilled and suspicious. Our first date was at a campus coffee shop, and I arrived early to secure a corner table where fewer people would stare. Jake was 20 minutes late, and I had convinced myself he wasn't coming at all when he rushed in, apologizing profusely about a practice session that ran long. "I was afraid you'd think I stood you up," he said, slightly out of breath. "I thought maybe you'd changed your mind." I admitted, "About wanting to be seen with me." His face softened. "Griselda, I asked you out because you're the most interesting person in our entire class. The way you talk about art like you're seeing layers no one else notices." He shook his head. "Your scars are part of you, but they're not why I'm here." That relationship lasted almost 2 years. And though we eventually parted ways due to different career paths, Jake helped me see that I could be desired, that my burns didn't make me unlovable. It was a revelation that changed how I moved through the world. After graduation, I discovered that my academic achievements didn't shield me from discrimination in the job market. I interviewed at several museums and galleries, always sensing the moment when my qualifications became secondary to my appearance. "We're looking for someone with more experience," they would say, or "We've decided to go in a different direction." One interviewer actually told me they needed someone who could be the face of the gallery, her emphasis making the subtext clear. Finally, a small, struggling gallery in Boston's South End took a chance on me as an assistant. The owner, an elderly woman named Ruth, was nearly blind from macular degeneration. "I can barely see your scars, dear," she told me frankly on my first day. "And more importantly, I don't care about them. Can you manage the accounts and talk intelligently about art? That's all that matters here." Under Ruth's mentorship, I flourished. I learned every aspect of running a gallery, from artist relations to installation design to sales. My eye for emerging talent helped bring fresh exhibits to the space, gradually increasing our profile in Boston's competitive art scene. When Ruth decided to retire 5 years later, she offered me the first opportunity to buy the gallery, even arranging owner financing that made it possible on my modest salary. It was at an arts fundraiser, shortly after becoming the gallery owner, that I met Michael. He was a sculptor whose work I had admired from afar but never connected with personally. We reached for the same hors d'oeuvre at the buffet table, and when I stepped back to let him go first, I noticed the slight adjustment in his stance, the subtle shift of weight that I recognized from friends with prosthetics. "Great exhibit, isn't it?" he said, seemingly unperturbed by my scars. "The textural contrasts are fascinating," I replied, relieved at his easy manner. He smiled. "I'm Michael Chen. Griselda Winters. I run the Cornerstone Gallery on Tremont." His eyes lit up. "I know your space. You had that incredible exhibition of tactile art last fall. I've been meaning to submit my portfolio." As we continued talking, I noticed he walked with a slight asymmetry, confirming my suspicion about a prosthetic. Later that evening, he mentioned it casually, explaining he had lost his left leg below the knee in a motorcycle accident in his 20s. "It changed everything about how I approached my art," he said. "Suddenly, I was obsessed with the relationship between the body and the space it occupies, how we adapt to physical changes, how we rebuild ourselves." Our friendship developed naturally, both of us understanding something about navigating the world in bodies that deviated from the norm. He visited my gallery often, and I attended his shows. We shared meals, then movies, then more intimate evenings. Unlike others who had claimed my scars didn't matter to them, Michael truly understood. He didn't see my burns as something to overlook or ignore. He saw them as part of my story elements that had shaped me, just as his amputation had shaped him. "People have such a narrow definition of beauty," he told me once as we lay in bed, his fingers gently tracing the ridged landscape of my scars. "They want symmetry, perfection, sameness. But nature doesn't work that way. The most interesting landscapes have variations, disruptions, unexpected elements. You're a masterpiece, Griselda, not despite these marks, but because of them." With Michael's encouragement, I expanded the gallery's mission, creating dedicated space for artists with disabilities and physical differences. We launched a successful series called Embodied Experience, featuring work that explored the reality of living in non-conforming bodies. The art world began to take notice, and soon Cornerstone Gallery was featured in national publications as a pioneer in disability-inclusive art spaces. For the first time since the fire, I felt fully alive, engaged in meaningful work and surrounded by people who valued me completely. I had built a life my father would have been proud of, a life that honored his belief in my potential. And I had found love with someone who saw beauty where others saw only damage. The only shadow on my happiness was my continued strained relationship with my mother and sister. We maintained contact through obligatory holiday calls and occasional visits, but there was always tension beneath the surface. They remained uncomfortable with my visibility, preferring when I wore high-necked tops and styled my hair to cover my face as much as possible. They never asked about the gallery changing the subject whenever I brought up my work. It was as if they wanted to relate to some imaginary version of me rather than the real person I had become. The wedding invitation drama began innocuously enough. Natalie called one Sunday evening to share her news. Brad, her boyfriend of 2 years, had proposed during their vacation in the Bahamas. Brad came from a wealthy family with real estate developments across the Northeast. He was handsome, charming, and by all accounts treated Natalie well. I was genuinely happy for my sister. "That's wonderful news, Nat, congratulations," I said, hoping my enthusiasm would help bridge the distance between us. "Thanks, Grizz," she replied, using my childhood nickname for the first time in years. "It's going to be amazing. We're thinking of a destination wedding, maybe Hawaii or Bali, somewhere with gorgeous beaches." "That sounds perfect for you two," I said. "When are you thinking?" "Next spring, probably April. Still working out details, but I'll keep you posted." The call ended on a positive note, and I felt a spark of hope. Perhaps this wedding would be an opportunity to reconnect, to finally move past the awkwardness that had characterized our adult relationship. I immediately began thinking about what I could contribute, perhaps helping with the artistic elements of the wedding, designing unique invitations, or coordinating with florists on arrangements that would complement Natalie's vision. A few weeks later, my mother called to invite me to Sunday brunch. Natalie wants to discuss wedding plans with the family, she explained. Nothing formal, just some initial ideas. I arrived at my mother's house with a small gift for Natalie, a handcrafted journal where she could record her wedding planning journey. The brunch started pleasantly enough with mimosas and my mother's famous blueberry pancakes. Brad was there as well as my mother's sister Monica and her husband. The conversation flowed easily as we discussed potential venues and date options. We've decided on Hawaii, Natalie announced. Specifically, a private beach on Maui. Brad's parents have connections with a resort there, and they're helping us book it. That sounds beautiful, I said sincerely. I'd be happy to help with any of the creative elements. Invitations, programs, even thinking about the overall aesthetic if you want. An uncomfortable silence fell over the table. Natalie glanced at our mother, then back at her plate. That's really nice of you, Grizz, but we're actually working with a professional wedding planner. She has connections with all the top vendors. Oh, of course, I said quickly, but if there's anything else you need help with, I'm here. The conversation shifted to dresses, and my mother turned to Monica. You'll need to come shopping with us. Your taste is always so perfect, and Natalie wants something really spectacular. I waited for an invitation to join the dress shopping expedition, but it never came. Instead, the discussion moved to the guest list. We're keeping it relatively small, like Brad explained. Just family and close friends, maybe 75 people total. The resort can't accommodate much more than that anyway. The Harringtons and the Blackwells will be there, of course, my mother added, naming some of her oldest friends. And we've got to include the Stevensons. Their son might be interested in investing in Brad's newest development. As the planning discussion continued, I noticed a pattern. Every time I offered a suggestion or asked a question about my potential role, the subject would change abruptly. When I mentioned helping with the rehearsal dinner, my mother suddenly remembered she needed to refill the coffee. When I asked about accommodation details, Natalie became intensely interested in showing Monica photos of flower arrangements on her phone. By the end of brunch, it was clear that while they were discussing the wedding in front of me, they weren't including me in it. Still, I tried to remain optimistic. Perhaps they were just in the early stages of planning and there would be time to include me later. Weeks passed and the formal invitations were sent out. My mother called to tell me how beautiful they were. Cream cardstock with gold foil lettering and a little watercolor painting of the Hawaiian beach. But my own invitation never arrived. I waited, checking the mail eagerly each day, telling myself there must have been a mix-up with the postal service. After 2 weeks of waiting, I finally called my mother. Mum, I haven't received my invitation to Natalie's wedding yet. I'm wondering if it got lost in the mail. There was a long pause. Oh, Griselda. Her voice had that forced brightness I knew so well. Actually, Natalie and I were going to talk to you about that. With the wedding being on the beach and all of Brad's business associates being there, we thought it might be best if you set this one out. I felt as if I'd been punched in the stomach. What exactly does that mean, Mum? She sighed. You know how important appearances are at these events. There will be professional photographers, and Natalie wants everything to look perfect. You understand, don't you? You'd just make it awkward for everyone. The casual cruelty of her words left me speechless. After all these years, after everything I had accomplished, they still saw me only as my scars, as an embarrassment to be hidden away. Does Natalie feel this way too? I finally asked, my voice barely above a whisper. She's the bride's sweetheart. It's her special day. We need to respect her wishes. I wanted to scream, to rage, to demand that my own family see me as a person worthy of inclusion. But years of conditioning kicked in. I understand, I said mechanically. Tell Natalie congratulations from me. After hanging up, I sat motionless on my sofa, the phone still clutched in my hand. Memories flooded through me. Natalie and I as children promising to be bridesmaids in each other's weddings. My father telling me that family was the one place where you were always accepted unconditionally. My mother assuring me after particularly difficult days at school that it didn't matter what strangers thought, because my family loved me just as I was. When Michael arrived that evening, he found me still sitting there, tears dried on my face. I told him everything, my voice flat with the effort of containing my pain. That's absolutely unacceptable, he said, his normally gentle voice hard with anger. How dare they? You're her sister, for God's sake. And your mother. I can't believe she would go along with this. They've always been this way, I said tiredly, ever since the accident. They tolerate me, but they don't want to acknowledge me. Not really. Michael paced across the living room, his prosthetic leg making a slightly different sound every other step. We should confront them, make them face what they're doing. I shook my head. It wouldn't change anything. They'd just feel justified in their decision, proof that I would have made a scene at the wedding. So what do you want to do? He asked, sitting beside me and taking my hands in his. I looked at him, this man who had seen my scars and found beauty, who had never once made me feel less than whole, and suddenly knew exactly what I wanted to do. I want to live well, I said. Isn't that supposed to be the best revenge? Michael's proposal wasn't entirely unexpected. We had discussed marriage before, agreeing that it was in our future without setting a specific timeline. But the night after the wedding invitation debacle, as we lay in bed talking about my family's rejection, he suddenly sat up. Marry me, he said, his eyes intense in the dim light. Not someday, now. My heart stuttered. What? I was planning to do this right anyway. Romantic dinner ring, the whole production. But life's too short for waiting, isn't it? That's what your father would say. He took my scarred hand in his. I love you, Griselda. I want to build a life with you, a family that celebrates who you are, instead of hiding you away. Marry me. I didn't hesitate. Yes. The next morning, we began planning our wedding. Michael suggested we schedule it for the same weekend as Natalie's, and I felt a momentary pang of guilt at the pettiness of it. But then I remembered my mother's words. You'd just make it awkward for everyone. And the guilt evaporated. This wasn't about spite. It was about reclaiming my joy during a time when my family had chosen to exclude me from theirs. We called Michael's family first. His parents had always been warm and welcoming to me, never staring or asking invasive questions about my scars. His mother Susan squealed with delight at our news and immediately began offering to help with arrangements. We can host it in our backyard, she suggested. It's not Hawaii, but the gardens will be beautiful in April. Actually, I said, I was thinking of the Gardner Museum. They have that incredible courtyard, and as members we might be able to reserve it. The Isabella Stewart Gardner Museum was one of my favorite places in Boston, a Venetian-style palace built around a lush courtyard garden. I had spent countless hours there as a college student, finding solace in its beauty during difficult times. To my delight, the museum had an unexpected opening for the last weekend in April. A previously booked wedding had just been cancelled. It was more expensive than we had initially planned, but both Michael and I agreed it was perfect and worth the splurge. Our guest list came together organically, artists we had worked with, friends from the disability community, Michael's large and boisterous family, my small circle of loyal friends from college and the gallery world. Uncle Tom and his wife were the only relatives from my side who would be invited. They had always treated me normally, and I knew they would be genuinely happy for me. For invitations, we commissioned a talented artist with cerebral palsy whose work I had featured in the gallery. Her designs included tactile elements for visually impaired guests, with embossed patterns that could be felt as well as seen. A wedding that embraces all the senses, she called it. For my dress, I chose something I never would have had the courage to wear before meeting Michael. A sleeveless gown with an open neckline that made no attempt to hide my scars. The designer, a friend who had created costumes for dancers with limb differences, incorporated subtle beading that followed the patterns of my scarring, transforming them into something deliberately beautiful rather than something to be concealed. The most important vendor decision was the photographer-videographer. We chose a documentary filmmaker who specialized in telling stories of the disability community with dignity and authenticity. She understood immediately what we wanted to capture. Not a sanitized, picture-perfect event, but a genuine celebration of love that included all kinds of bodies and appearances. As our plans progressed, I occasionally battled waves of doubt and sadness about not including my mother and sister. After one particularly emotional evening, Michael held me as I cried. "We can invite them if you want," he said gently. "It's your day too." I shook my head. They made their choice. If they don't want me at Natalie's wedding, I don't want them at mine. I looked up at him. "Is that terrible of me?" "No," he said firmly. "It's self-preservation, and it's okay to prioritize your joy over people who have consistently diminished it, even if they're family." He was right, of course. And as our wedding day approached, I found myself surrounded by more love and support than I had experienced since my father died. Michael's mother stepped effortlessly into the maternal role mine had abandoned, helping me with decisions and traditions, never once making me feel like an imposition. His sisters included me in a bachelorette weekend that focused on art and food, rather than the typical bar-hopping, thoughtfully planning activities where I would feel comfortable and celebrated. His extended family sent handwritten notes welcoming me, many sharing their own stories of adversity and resilience. What had begun as a reaction to rejection transformed into something much more meaningful, a true celebration of the life and community Michael and I had built. A statement that love doesn't require perfection or conformity to some arbitrary standard of beauty. The day of Natalie's Hawaii wedding arrived with a strange sense of unreality. Though I wasn't there, I felt the weight of the day knowing my family was gathering without me. My phone buzzed periodically with texts from extended family members who didn't know I'd been excluded. "Beautiful ceremony," wrote a cousin. "Wish you were here to see it." My Aunt Monica, who must have been in on the decision to exclude me, nevertheless sent a group text to all family members. "Natalie looks radiant, perfect weather for a beach wedding." She had attached a photo of Natalie in her wedding dress posing with our mother. They both looked happy, relaxed, unburdened by my conspicuous absence. I turned off my phone after that. Michael took me to dinner at our favorite restaurant, deliberately steering our conversation away from my family. Later, we worked on final details for our own wedding, now just 1 week away. There was something healing about channeling my hurt into creating something beautiful, something true to who we were. The day of our wedding dawned clear and bright with spring sunshine warming the courtyard of the Gardner Museum. I woke early, a mixture of excitement and lingering sadness coursing through me. I wished not for the first time that my father could have been there to walk me down the aisle. He would have been so proud of the life I'd built, so happy to see me marrying someone who truly valued me. In his absence, I asked Uncle Tom to escort me. When he arrived at the bridal suite where I was getting ready, his eyes filled with tears. "You look absolutely beautiful, Griselda," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "Your dad would be bursting with pride today." The museum courtyard had been transformed with additional flowers, complementing the permanent plantings. Chairs were arranged in a semicircle around a simple arch draped with vines and white blooms. Michael's large family filled most of the seats along with our diverse collection of friends and colleagues. Some used wheelchairs or mobility aids, others had visible differences like mine, but many appeared conventionally normal, all united by their genuine happiness for us. When the music began and I stepped into the courtyard on Uncle Tom's arm, I saw Michael waiting for me, his face alight with love. In that moment, all thoughts of my mother and sister fell away. This was our day, our celebration, our community. The ceremony was everything we had hoped for. Michael's vows acknowledged the journey we had both taken to find each other. "Griselda, before I met you, I thought I had made peace with my body, but you showed me that acceptance isn't enough. There is celebration to be found in our differences, beauty in our unique paths. You helped me see myself more completely, and I promise to always do the same for you. I promise to create a home where all of who you are is not just accepted, but cherished, where your scars are understood as the map of your courage, not something to be hidden away." My own vows echoed his sentiments. "Michael, you came into my life when I had built walls to protect myself from rejection. You didn't try to break those walls down. Instead, you showed me they weren't necessary with you. You've taught me that real love doesn't require hiding or changing who I am. I promise to bring that same acceptance to our life together, to see you completely and love all that I see. I promise to build with you a family where differences are celebrated, where no one is ever made to feel they would make things awkward by simply existing as they are." Our first dance was to my father's favourite song, a bittersweet tribute, that had many guests wiping away tears. As we moved across the floor, Michael occasionally compensating for the slight imbalance caused by his prosthetic, I felt my father's presence strongly. He would have loved Michael, would have been so grateful that I had found someone who saw me as he had always seen me. Complete, worthy, beautiful in my own way. Instead of traditional wedding favours, we had made donations in our guests' names to organisations supporting burn survivors and amputees. During the reception, we unveiled plans for a new exhibition space at my gallery, dedicated to artists exploring themes of bodily difference and adaptation to be named in honour of my father. The videographer moved through the celebration unobtrusively, capturing candid moments rather than staged poses. The wedding party included Michael's siblings and my closest friends, a colourful array of people representing different body types, abilities and backgrounds. The speeches were heartfelt, focusing on our journey together and the community we had built. Michael's mother gave a particularly moving toast. In our family, we have always believed that love expands the definition of beauty rather than conforming to it. Watching Michael and Griselda together has been a masterclass in this truth. They have shown us that true love doesn't ask us to be perfect. It asks us to be authentic. To Griselda and Michael, may your marriage continue to teach the world what real beauty looks like. As the evening progressed, I looked around at the joyful celebration and felt a profound sense of gratitude. This was what family should be. People who embraced you completely, who celebrated rather than tolerated your presence. My mother and sister had given me a painful gift with their rejection, the freedom to create this new family on my own terms. The videographer delivered our wedding highlight reel just 3 weeks later. The 5-minute video captured the essence of our day beautifully. The museum courtyard in bloom, our emotional vows, the joyous dancing, the diverse community gathered to celebrate us. It was artistic rather than conventional, focusing on authentic moments rather than posed perfection. Watching it, I felt a sense of completeness, of having created something true to who we were. A month after our wedding, my mother called to invite Michael and me to dinner. Natalie and Brad had returned from their extended honeymoon in Hawaii, where they had stayed on after the wedding with my mother for a family vacation. This would be their first dinner back, and my mother wanted the whole family to attend. It would mean a lot to your sister, she said, her voice carefully neutral. And we haven't met Michael properly yet. I hesitated, torn between self-protection and the persistent hope that things might somehow be different. Michael, overhearing the conversation, nodded encouragingly. We can always leave if it gets uncomfortable, he whispered. All right, Mom, I agreed. We'll be there. When we arrived at my mother's house, Natalie and Brad were already seated in the living room, flipping through a leather-bound wedding album. My mother embraced me stiffly, then turned to Michael with a practiced social smile. So lovely to finally meet you, she said. Griselda hasn't told us much about you. That's not surprising, Michael replied pleasantly, considering she wasn't invited to family gatherings where she might have mentioned me. A momentary tension filled the room before Brad, apparently oblivious to the undercurrents, jumped in with questions about Michael's work. The conversation moved to safer ground as we were ushered to the dining table, set with my mother's best china and crystal glasses. Throughout the meal, Natalie and my mother dominated the conversation with stories from the wedding and honeymoon. They passed around professional photos showing the beachfront ceremony, the elegant reception, the family grouped together in their color-coordinated outfits. The photographer was worth every penny, my mother gushed. He knew exactly how to capture everyone at their best angle. The lighting at sunset was perfect, Natalie added. Everything looked so beautiful. I nodded and smiled, feeling the familiar ache of exclusion, but determined not to show it. Michael squeezed my hand under the table, his touch a silent reminder that I wasn't alone anymore. As dessert was served, my mother turned to me with her bright, artificial smile. So, Griselda, I noticed you took some vacation time around the same time as the wedding. Did you and Michael go somewhere nice? It was the opening I had been waiting for, though I was surprised she had handed it to me so directly. I returned her smile with equal brightness. Actually, we didn't go anywhere. We got married. The clatter of Natalie's fork against her plate was the only sound in the sudden silence. My mother's face froze in its polite expression, while Brad looked confusedly between us all. You... what? Natalie finally managed. We got married, I repeated calmly. Right here in Boston at the Gardner Museum. My mother's composure cracked slightly. But why didn't you tell us we're your family? I met her gaze steadily. Am I? Because when you excluded me from Natalie's wedding, it felt very much like I wasn't considered family anymore. That was different, Natalie protested weakly. It was a destination wedding, very small, with 75 guests, including distant cousins and business associates. I finished for her. Everyone except me. Michael placed his arm around my shoulders in a gesture of support. I reached into my bag and pulled out my phone. Would you like to see? Our videographer did an amazing job capturing the day. Without waiting for their response, I played our wedding highlight video on my phone, setting it on the table where they could all see. The footage was undeniably beautiful. The museum courtyard in bloom, our emotional vows, the joyous celebration afterward. Throughout the video, my scars were clearly visible, unobscured by makeup or strategic camera angles, simply part of the bride being celebrated by all present. As the video ended, I slipped my phone back into my bag. We decided to surround ourselves with people who love us completely, who celebrate rather than merely tolerate who we are. My mother's face had gone pale. You did this deliberately, she accused, Agad. To spite us, to embarrass us. No, Mum, I said gently. I did it for me. For the first time in my life since the accident, I made a decision without considering whether it would make you uncomfortable. I chose my happiness over your discomfort. Natalie was crying, now silent tears tracking her makeup. You could have told us, she said. We would have come. I looked at her incredulously. Would you, after telling me I would make your wedding awkward, after excluding me from the most important day of your life, because of how I look? That's not fair, my mother interjected. Natalie wanted her day to be perfect. You can't blame her for that. Perfect according to whose definition? Michael asked, speaking up for the first time since the revelation. A wedding should be about love and family, not about creating some artificial vision of perfection that excludes people who don't fit a narrow beauty standard. My mother bristled. You don't understand. Our family has been through a lot with Griselda's accident. We've always tried to protect her. No, I said firmly. You've tried to protect yourselves from the discomfort of acknowledging me fully. There's a difference. Brad, looking increasingly uncomfortable, touched Natalie's arm. Maybe we should go, he suggested quietly. No, Natalie said, wiping her eyes. I want to understand. Did you really feel that excluded, Grizz? All these years? The use of my childhood nickname pierced through my carefully maintained composure. Yes, I admitted, my voice softening. Since the accident, I felt like you and Mom were embarrassed by me, like you wanted to hide me away. Dad was the only one who still saw me as whole. Natalie flinched at the mention of our father. I wasn't embarrassed, she protested weakly. I just didn't know how to act around you. Everything changed after the accident. I changed, I corrected her. My appearance changed, but who I am inside didn't. I was still your sister, still the same person who shared secrets with you and played silly games. You were the one who pulled away. My mother stood abruptly, gathering dishes with shaking hands. This is too much for one evening. Perhaps we should continue this conversation another time. Atika, so. Michael and I exchanged glances and stood as well. We should go, he said. Thank you for dinner, Mrs. Winters. As we prepared to leave, Natalie suddenly embraced me, catching me off guard. I'm sorry, she whispered. I didn't realize. I never meant to hurt you. I hugged her back briefly, not quite ready to forgive, but recognizing the gesture for what it was, a first tentative step toward healing. I know, I said. We can talk more later if you want. My mother remained stiff and distant as we said our goodbyes, clearly struggling with the revelations of the evening. As Michael and I drove home, I felt emotionally drained, but also strangely liberated. For years, I had carried the weight of their rejection, internalizing the idea that there was something wrong with me. Now I had finally spoken my truth, refusing to accept their narrative any longer. Are you okay? Michael asked. As we entered our apartment, I considered the question carefully. Yes, I said finally. For the first time in a very long time, I think I really am. The weeks following our dinner revelation brought unexpected developments. The first surprise came from Natalie, who texted me 3 days after our confrontation, asking if we could meet for coffee. Alone. We met at a quiet cafe near my gallery. Natalie looked tired, her usual perfect appearance, slightly disheveled. When she spoke, her words tumbled out in a rush. I've been thinking about everything you said, about how we treated you, and you're right, I did pull away after your accident. But it wasn't because I was embarrassed. She twisted her wedding ring nervously. I was scared. You were in so much pain and nothing I did seemed to help. And everyone was so focused on you. The doctors, our parents, the extended family. I felt invisible. It was a perspective I had never considered. While I was struggling with my new reality, 12-year-old Natalie had been dealing with her own form of trauma. As we got older, she continued, it just seemed easier to maintain that distance. And yes, part of me was uncomfortable with how people stared or asked questions when we were out together. I didn't know how to handle it, how to defend you without making things worse. You didn't need to defend me, I said gently. You just needed to stand beside me. Tears filled her eyes. I know that now. Watching your wedding video, you looked so happy, so confident. And everyone there was just celebrating you, not focusing on your scars. It made me realize how shallow my own wedding was, how focused on appearances rather than what really matters. Your wedding wasn't shallow, I protested. It was what you wanted. What Mum wanted, she corrected. She was the one who kept talking about how everything needed to be perfect, how important it was to impress Brad's family. When the issue of inviting you came up, she was the one who suggested it might be better if you didn't come. Gay! She looked down in shame. I should have stood up to her, but I didn't. And I'll always regret that. It was a small vindication, knowing that the exclusion had originated with my mother rather than my sister. But Natalie's complicity still hurt. Why did you go along with it? I asked. She sighed. Because I'm weak. Because I've always sought Mum's approval. Because it was easier than standing up for what was right. She reached for my hand across the table. I'm so sorry, Grizz. I know I don't deserve your forgiveness, but I'm asking for a chance to be a better sister going forward. I looked at my younger sister. Always the pretty one, the perfect one, the one who fit seamlessly into the world my mother valued. For the first time, I saw her clearly insecure, desperate for approval, trapped in her own way by expectations of perfection. We have a lot of ground to make up, I said carefully, but I'd like to try. Our coffee meeting became a weekly ritual. Sometimes we talked about the past, painful as it was. Other times we focused on the present. Her adjustment to married life, my work at the gallery, our shared interests that had been buried under years of estrangement. Slowly, tentatively, we began rebuilding our sisterhood. My mother was a more difficult case. She avoided my calls for weeks after the dinner confrontation. When she finally agreed to meet, it was on her terms. Lunch at her country club, where she felt comfortable and in control. I don't understand why you're so angry, she said as soon as we were seated. Everything I've ever done has been to protect you. By hiding me away, by teaching me to be ashamed of my appearance, I countered. The world is cruel, Griselda. People judge based on appearances. I was trying to shield you from that. But you became part of that cruelty, Mom. You judged me too. You made me feel like I wasn't good enough to be seen with the rest of the family. She flinched. That's not true. I love you. You love an idea of me, I said. The daughter I was before the accident, or some future version of me where my scars magically disappear. But you've never fully accepted the real me, the person I am now. My mother stared out the window, avoiding my gaze. It was so hard, she said finally. Seeing you in pain, watching people stare or whisper. As your mother, I was supposed to protect you from harm, and I couldn't. I failed you once when the accident happened, and then I kept failing you because I didn't know how to navigate this world with you. I felt a flicker of empathy. My mother had been faced with a situation no parent expects. A child permanently altered, a future suddenly uncertain. She had handled it badly, but perhaps not maliciously. I'm not that frightened, injured child anymore, Mom. I've built a good life. I have work, I'm passionate about friends who value me, a husband who loves me completely. I don't need protection, I need acceptance. She nodded slowly. Your wedding video. You looked beautiful, truly happy. She hesitated. Your father would have been so proud. The mention of my father brought unexpected tears to my eyes. He always saw me as whole, I said quietly, even when you couldn't. He was better at that than me, she admitted. More accepting, less concerned with what others thought. She reached across the table, tentatively touching my scarred hand. I'm sorry, Griselda, for the wedding, for all of it. I've been wrong in so many ways. It wasn't a complete transformation. My mother still occasionally slipped into old habits, suggesting clothing that would minimize my scars, or seeming uncomfortable when strangers stared. But it was a beginning, an acknowledgement that her approach had been harmful rather than helpful. The most significant breakthrough came several months later when I invited her to attend the opening of a new exhibition at my gallery, titled Marked Beauty in Difference. It featured works by artists with visible differences and physical disabilities, including several burn survivors. I hadn't expected her to come, but she arrived early, elegantly dressed, and clearly nervous. She moved slowly through the exhibition, studying each piece carefully. I watched from a distance as she paused in front of a large self-portrait by a woman with facial scarring similar to mine. It's extraordinary, she said when I approached. The way she's used light and shadow. She's not hiding her scars at all, but somehow they become just another interesting element in the composition. That's the point of the whole exhibition, I explained. Differences as variations to be explored rather than flaws to be concealed. My mother nodded thoughtfully. I think I'm beginning to understand. Qu'est-ce? She gestured around at the crowded gallery, where critics, collectors, and art lovers mingled. They all see it, don't they? The beauty in what I could only see as damage. They see the whole person, Mom. The scars are just part of the story. Later that evening, after most guests had departed, my mother embraced me properly for the first time in years. Not the stiff, awkward hugs she usually offered, but a genuine, warm embrace that acknowledged all of me. "I'm proud of you," she whispered. "Your father was right about you all along." A year after our wedding, Natalie announced she was pregnant. To my surprise, she asked if Michael and I would be the baby's godparents. "There's no one else I trust more to teach this child about what really matters," she said. Around the same time, Michael and I began discussing starting our own family. The prospect of becoming parents brought up complex emotions for me. Fears about passing on my insecurities, hopes for creating a family environment unlike the one I had experienced after my accident. "Our children will know they are perfect exactly as they are," Michael promised. "Whether they have 2 legs, 1 leg, or scars, or any other difference. We'll make sure of it." The healing process with my family continues. There are still difficult moments, old patterns that resurface, painful memories that can't be erased. But there is progress too. Genuine efforts to understand, to connect, to build something healthier than what came before. My wedding video, initially a source of contention, became unexpectedly significant beyond our family drama. When the documentary filmmaker who had created it asked permission to include segments in a film about beauty standards and inclusion, we readily agreed. The film was selected for several festivals, bringing our story to a wider audience and connecting us with others who had experienced similar exclusion based on physical differences. Through this exposure, I began receiving messages from people around the world: burn survivors, people with visible differences, anyone who had felt pushed aside for not conforming to conventional beauty standards. Many shared their own stories of family rejection or exclusion from important events. Some asked for advice on building confidence or finding community. Others simply expressed gratitude for seeing their experiences reflected. What began as a personal journey of standing up for myself became something larger, a platform for advocating inclusion and challenging narrow beauty standards. Michael and I now regularly speak at events about our experiences using our story to help others find their voice. The most powerful lesson in all of this has been learning that family is not just who you're born to, but who you choose to surround yourself with. Sometimes those circles overlap, sometimes they don't. Either way, everyone deserves to be fully seen, completely accepted, and genuinely celebrated for who they are. Have you ever been excluded from a family event or made to feel like you didn't belong? How did you handle it? I'd love to hear your stories in the comments below. If this video resonated with you, please hit that like button and subscribe to hear more stories about finding strength in difficult situations. Share this with someone who might need to be reminded that they deserve to be celebrated just as they are. Thank you for listening, and remember, creating your own celebration is sometimes the most powerful response to rejection.